A brand new Minnesota Wild prospect has already made a major change in his career, switching to a different league, and we're going to be breaking that down, going over the prospect and what this means for him going forward. But we also need to talk about Kirill Kaprizov and the current status of his contract extension. We're going to be breaking it all down here in this video. Before we do jump into it, though, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the sub button. We also just over 90% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel, and we got a lot of Wild news still to cover with Rossi unsigned, Kirill Kaprizov an extension coming, and stuff just like this, where we have a very interesting prospect who has switched over to the OHL. And we're going to be breaking that down here, jumping straight into it, going over Adam Benak, recently acquired in the draft from the Minnesota Wild. They have signed, or the Hamilton Bulldogs have signed Adam Benak from the OHL import draft, the second overall pick to a scholarship and development agreement. The centerman was named to a 24-25 USHL All-Rookie team. Now, this is a bit of an interesting decision from Adam Benak, as normally in most people, in most instances now, especially where we can see these CHL players move over to the NCAA, usually we see a lot of players go south of the border from Canada to the US to either play in the USHL or in college. But Adam Benak has decided to go against that, and when he drafted second overall in the OHL import draft, decided to sign with the Hamilton Bulldogs, who of course, obviously, historic team from a former AHL team to the Montreal Canadiens, now an OHL team. This is a very interesting decision for him. I'm already breaking it down really why here in this video. And I want to kind of continue to go up over his kind of last year's stats from the Youngstown Phantoms, as well as playing for Czechia in all of the U18, whether it is the World Juniors, whether it is the International Junior. He's been a phenomenal player. And I think there's one thing that we're going to jump into that's really a blaring kind of hole in his game, but once again, nothing he can do about it, and you probably get an idea of what that is now when I'm kind of talking about it. But he's been a player that has been a very promising kind of prospect for the last little while, even before the draft, when we're starting to see players and scouts break him down, and honestly slipped a little bit further than I had in my draft, and obviously can't complain because he obviously went to the Minnesota Wild, and that works out very, very well in our favor. But I did want to pull up one thing to kind of get the idea, the baseline of what many different players and coaches and staff and people and scouts are thinking about Adam Benak. Now, this comes from the Youngstown head coach, Ryan Ward. He's saying he's the smartest player I've ever coached, one of the best skaters I've ever seen. Now, this is obviously some big praise for a very young player who is a little bit undersized, and by a little bit, I mean quite a bit, and going into this kind of league, a different league where you have the OHL, which is quite a bit of a high-scoring league compared to majority of, the USHL, NCAA. You see some guys put up some astronomical point totals, and I think this is a great decision from Adam Benak, and I think I'll get that out of the way. I think this is a very smart decision for a few reasons, and we'll kind of go over that as well. Now, the OHL is a little bit of a smaller league, not necessarily super small. You still have quite a few, skyscrapers in that league, I guess we can call them, but the OHL is, or not even just the OHL, but the QMJHL, the OHL, the WHL, all of the Canadian junior leagues are quite a bit smaller, quite a bit younger than what the USHL and the NCAA are. And of course, the USHL is a similar league, but different in its own ways, where you're getting a bunch of different style players. You're getting quite a few European players, while the CHL, a lot of Canadian, primarily dominated by Canadians with a few Europeans as well. And then you have the scatter USA-born player thrown in there, but this league and all of the other Canadian leagues are smaller, a little bit, not necessarily slower, but you have a lot of these skilled players. Some lack defense, some lack goaltending, and it really lets offensive players shine, whether that is on defense or a forward, whoever you are. If you have some offense, you will shine, and I think that's where Adam Benak really makes this decision. And also, he's still very young, can decide, and now that the option's there to go to the NCAA after the CHL, it opens up a lot of pathways for him rather than keeping it the same. But this is one where, of course, second overall pick, you're getting your scholarship, your school and stuff, everything coming into it. It makes a little bit of sense for Adam Benak to make this happen and kind of go this route instead. And at 5'7", 164, he is definitely a smaller statured player, but in 59 points in 56 games with Youngstown, he's been proven that he's gonna, put up some insane numbers here with the Hamilton Bulldogs. And from a fourth round pick to, where people thought we'd see him at the second round, early second round, some in the third, and very few saw him in the fourth. I think he's going to have a good experience here in the OHL. He's going to learn a lot, but also gives him another pathway, as I mentioned, to go down to the NCAA after this now with a potential scholarship coming in. At 18 years old, still has a lot of time to develop, still has a lot of time to grow. And I think one thing that I think a lot of people really need to keep in mind here is what Scott Wheeler said prior to the draft. People just look at his size and should think twice. He's a special player. Just give him some time. And this move to the Hamilton Bulldogs really gives him that time. It lets him go out here, learn in a different kind of league, learn in a different kind of play style, and then ultimately going down to what we can probably assume will be the NCAA at some point, going from the USHL to the OHL, or the CHL, I'll just call it to make it easier, down to the NCAA to the AHL, then NHL level. It lets him play at just about every level after already playing in Europe as well. So he's checking all the boxes here early in his career. And he is one of the smallest players, as you see there from Scott Wheeler, but he's also one of the fastest and smartest. So people know his game is not about size. It don't matter what size you are. You've got guys like Cole Caulfield. You had a guy like Johnny Gaudreau, who, of course, rest in peace. But those statures, those play styles, people don't think they will work in the NHL, but they absolutely do. So Adam Benak just needs to keep that in mind, give him time, and he's already one of the smartest, and it just allows him to kind of grow as a player. So I want to know what you guys think about this move. And obviously, it's not affecting the Minnesota Wild right now, but it is something to certainly keep an eye on as we get closer and closer to, his appearance eventually in the NHL, which still may be a couple of years down the road. And whatever happens after this season, whether he does actually take the NCAA route, there's lots of options for him to kind of explore these pathways. And I'm excited to see it. I think it's just a very good decision overall for him to go here and make those moves. But I did want to talk about Kirill Kaprizov as well. And Joe Smith and Michael Russo of The Athletic had to say this in I believe it was an AMA. The Wild and Kirill Kaprizov and his camp will have a face-to-face meeting when he returns back to Minnesota from Moscow sometime this month. From his exit meetings, Kaprizov said he loves Minnesota and it should be all good. GM Bill Guerin is confident something will get done, and you can't rule out an 8-year, $15 million per year deal. So this is a very big update regarding Kirill Kaprizov, that he is going to be having a face-to-face conversation with Bill Guerin and the Minnesota Wild come later this month, whatever point he does return from Moscow, whenever he does return to Minnesota. And this is when I think things will really start to kind of ramp up. Things will start to get going under that contract. And of course, this is one that you don't want to rush it. You want to see all pathways. You want to see all avenues. And you see people kind of worrying about, him not having conversations intensely yet with the Minnesota Wild, but there's still a lot of time, and with these conversations, with what he had to say, how confident he is and how much he loves Minnesota, it really makes, a lot of pressure come off when you're seeing that he wants to return. So looking at the AFP analytics kind of side of things as well, because I want to talk about the price. A $15 million contract is something that I would really be already willing to give him, but when you go an 8-year, 12.9, even this alone seems like a steal. So there's a lot of avenues the Wilds will really want to take here when you're getting projections like this, where you're upwards of 12, 13 million, and then you go to a 15 million. Even though it's only a $3 million jump, it still is 15, 13. You're coming into this and seeing some major numbers. And when it comes down the road, the contract will be good. In 5-6 years' time, it'll look like an $8-9 million contract. I posted it in one of the videos prior where you had a breakdown of what a contract like this would look like come a few years' time. So any contract like this for Kirill Kaprizov, he's going to be getting it. He's going to be worth it. You know what you're getting out of this guy, and you really cannot afford to let him slip. And once another, if you need any more reassurance here, Jay Fresh posted this where you're seeing a 99% projected WAR, 98 in offense, 77 on defense. Just a lot of positivity, everything pretty much above 90. And I saw some people surprised that a 77% defense was there for Kirill Kaprizov, but we got to remember how good his stick is in the defensive zone, how many steals, how many takeaways he got. It just kind of adds to his game and makes him even more valuable in that case, coming down to, whatever salary he will get. And I wanted to pull this up before I do finish this off as well. Kaprizov's contract demands ultimately come down to one question. Assuming he's signed to the $15 million figure, Minnesota must ask if he's worth 14.4% of their cap for the 26-27 season, and even less throughout the subsequent years. And I think there's one answer to this. Yes, he is worth 14.4% of your cap. He takes up the place of numerous other mid-tier players. You could have 5 players on a line, and all of them combined wouldn't be as good as Kirill Kaprizov. So I think, yes, obviously, he is worth $14.4 million. If you can get it lower, fine. Obviously that's a major win, but if you get him for 15, I think that's going to be kind of the new norm for players like this. And of course, he may have this record for a couple weeks before Connor McDavid signs his extension or signs elsewhere with, whatever team it may be. He'll be at the 15, 16, maybe even $1 million level. And I think that's one thing that we just have to think about. What level you're at, what kind of idea everything is at. I think this is the move that the Wild are really going to make here. So let me know what you think about all of this news that we have here today. Of course, Adam Benak, very interesting one. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about that, if this move will benefit him or not, and how his pathway could really kind of check all the boxes here going into it. But like I said, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.